Director of Public Health, Sanitation and Health Planning for Sierra County. I'm going to be doing the two presentations that was supposed to be done by Dr. Elizabeth Obinge. I don't know if they're up and running because I really wanted to do them in a way that it's easily understandable and I give you much time to interrogate what we are doing as a county and also to be able to begin new ideas on how we can be able to.
Presentation may take a few minutes. Sorry. So, Sofina, is yours ready? And I'm informed the online audience are using the link that was shared yesterday or morning, a few minutes ago. So our colleagues online, that includes Eva Masinde, will be joining using the link that has just been shared. So if you use that, will the online guys be able to see a shared screen? Because I think we need one that is connected so that the screen can be shared with the online audience, right? Oh, you will share it. Thank you. So she will share using a different machine. Okay. So introduce yourself again and then begin with the presentation.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're well. All right. So Leonard tells me we have, is it 15 minutes, Leonard? He tells me we have 7 minutes each, so I'll just run us through understanding the state of the early childhood care workforce in Kenya. And just to give you a background on this, as Uthabiti Africa, we have been able to engage with women. And, in the morning we were told not to say women in daycares, but women in childcare centers. So I will present your findings and insights as analyzed. So the objectives for our study were to document the age profiles of the young women who are working in the households and the ECEE centers. And then also it was important to us to try and identify the challenges that are facing these workers, those who are in employment and also those who are out of employment. And then the final objective of our study was to propose the policy and regulatory reforms necessary. And I think that is one place all of us as stakeholders are really looking forward to hearing some of the policies and regulatory reforms about collecting this data. So the data collection began last year in August, and it's been going through until the end of July 2021. The initial sample size was 50 respondents, but over the year, we've been able to add 160 more respondents. Hence, the sample size was 210 respondents. And these respondents were in the counties of Kisumu, Nairobi, and Mombasa. So for how the data was collected, we did this through questionnaires, having individual interviews, and getting focus group discussions with these women in their individual communities. And so very fast, because of time, I want to just dive into the findings to help us understand, what is it that we identified. So the first objective was on the age profiles of the women. And we discovered that most of the women are actually very young, with the average being between the ages of 21 and 32 years. But we even had outliers whereby you get women as old as 70 years being able to take care of children because, they are at home, they have a space, and they have neighbors who have kids. And then the other finding that was very important, and I feel we need to know, is that in most cases, these women lack any formal training or certification as relates to taking care of the child, and any training on early child care and education. And because of this, we also discovered, basic practices such as record keeping, monitoring the growth of the children, emphasis on play and learning were really not observed. But besides that, these women were doing their best, according to how society says we should raise children. And also, after that, one of the objectives was on the challenges. So the first challenge we identified is that childcare workers, again, have limited access to either training, capacity building, or certification, and they also do not have access and support from county governments and stakeholders like ourselves. And then the second challenge is there's a little connectedness between childcare workers and the ecosystem. So you identify someone in Nakuru probably is just working with an organization in Nakuru, someone in Nairobi, someone in Kajiado, and that is happening across the counties. So there's a little connectedness. And then the last one is, despite there being programs by ourselves as the stakeholders, most of these women are not aware of how to link up to the programs in childcare to be able to, better themselves or learn or even get the opportunities available. And then the last finding was to just identify the policy and regulatory reforms. So I know my colleagues will be speaking extensively on this, but just at a glance, there's a glaring policy and regulatory deficit to guide and support the workforce in the childcare sector in Kenya. And a very good example is today we've had the different counties making their presentations. So the question is, how is it that even the information provided here, how can this information be interlinked, for all of us to have access to it? And so that being the case, indeed, it is true. There's a need to develop policies and regulatory reforms, both with the national government and county governments. So onto my last slide, the question will be, as an expert who deals with the workforce on a day-to-day, what are the recommendations that we are offering? So first and foremost, we need something that covers everyone in the country. That's the policy and regulatory reforms. And then the other thing is, I'm so happy to be addressing all of us because then it's a question of increased collaboration and partnership. We as the stakeholders getting to work together, not only with the government, but also with donors, NGOs, CBOs, and the individual childcare enterprises. And then the other recommendation is having increased investment and education in the childcare sector. And then finally, we are looking to multiply impact. The work we are doing so far is good, but it would also be better if we can reach more children, achieve more impact as stakeholders, as governments, as organizations, as individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. I think she managed time, and I hope the presentation is relevant to some of your expectation. We keep talking about children as young as possible, but we need to know where are they? Who is taking care of them now? And how do we position ourselves to serve them better? So I hope that presentation, even though the data that was collected may not necessarily come from every of your towns, villages, or cities, but it can have something that you can relate with. So I would request that you note down your questions. We will do 2 more presentations, then we can take 1 round of questions, and we can take the last 3 sets of presentation. So Ken, I would use that same flow by this team, the introducing the recommendations that are covered by the other 2 presentations, and then we will shift gears into your presentation. Please do not leave anyone here listen to each of these presentations, they all have prepared, traveled, and they have something useful for all of us. So I'll request that, the way we've listened to Sofina is the same way we will listen to the last person presenting. Thank you very much. So next we have Tracy. You're welcome. And I know we have several people from counties here because of the interest in ensuring that there are sustainable policies, guidelines, and regulations to ensure that the work of children continues. From yesterday, we had conversations here. People say services and programs for children should not depend on who is in the office. It should be anchored in law and guaranteed. Tracy.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Tracy Koske. I'm going to take you through a study that was done by Advocacy early in 2020, and it's about strengthening early childhood care and education in urban settings. Sorry for that. Reflections on policy and practice. The study was done in early 2020, and it was majorly done in 3 counties. That was Mombasa, Kisumu, and Nairobi. The objectives of the study were to, 1, establish childcare policy and regulatory gaps in Kenya. What are the gaps that we currently have in policy? What can we do? What can we do with the existing gaps? How can we support as authority? How can we support as organizations that work with the county governments? The other objective that we had was to identify, to map out childcare services and interventions and understand the service gaps. Yes, we know that these are the policy gaps that we have, but what are the service gaps? We are all implementing programs with the women with the caregivers in the field, but what are the service gaps? Is it the certification? Is it the just mentioned some of the discussion we had yesterday on the curriculum? Is it their children? Is it the materials that they have? What are the service gaps that are currently existing in these childcare centers? We also wanted to examine the demographics and faced by childcare service providers. What is the majority of the people who are taking care of children? Are they women? Presentation done by Sofina mentioned that the ages are between 21 and 35 or 32. That's one of the things that we established through this study. And the last one, after establishing what is missing, then how can, providing recommendations for a comprehensive and a holistic childcare policy and regulatory reform. We have all these studies done. We have established the gaps in service. How can we influence policy with the information that we have? We did this using the following. We did a desk review of the existing policy and frameworks. Desk review existing the 3 counties, Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa. We also did a stakeholder mapping and involved them in discussions, focus group discussions. We also worked with, we consulted and we did consultation and validation with experts of childcare and education and county governments. And then we also worked with stakeholders, the non-state actors, that is the NGOs, and the private daycare centers, which now Oscar recommended that we call them childcare centers. Some of the documents that we reviewed included the following. There were policy frameworks, national, and we also had the existing legal frameworks. Just to mention a few, we had the National Children Policy, that is the National Children Policy, Kenya 2010. Then we also had others like the National Plan and Action of Children in Kenya, the Early Childhood Development Service, Standards, Guidelines for Kenya. The legal frameworks that we reviewed or we went through included the Constitution of Kenya, that is Article 53. We also had the Children Act, the Basic Education Act, and also not to forget the National Pre-Primary Policy 2017. Just to mention, globally, we have a shocking number of how many children need childcare. And a total of 350 million children globally need childcare, but currently do not have access. They need it, but do not have access. This translates to 43% of children globally. And there are efforts by the government to actually make there are efforts by the government to make the children or the childcare service provision and the regulation up to a certain standard that including county the county ECD acts. We have the breastfeeding, maternity, and paternity leave, and the child protection policies. However, about 100 million women globally working in the informal sector do not get help or do not get to benefit from the existing policies. Some of the gaps that we found out, just to go back. So the 100 million of women that work in the informal sector, at the end of the day, have to depend on alternative care. And we'll mention later on, but currently the alternative care that is existing, that is available for these women working in informal sector, include the child care centers, the relatives of these children and families. Some leave their kids to their neighbors, and as lastly, I know a huge percentage employing care at home. So that includes nanny and also those people who take care of your children at home. So of all the documents and the policies that we went through, we have the National Children Policy 2010. We made an observation that it largely assumes that alternative care is available. Currently, many women have been involved in economic activities, and even now, when you call upon your cousin or your aunt, or even your mother to take care of your child, she's somewhere else also working, trying to fend for her needs. So right now, alternative care is not available, and we, like from relatives, so we have to go back and employ someone to take care of our children or take them to childcare centers. The National Pre-Primary Policy, also we made an observation that it hugely assumes that learning starts at the age of 4. And lastly, the guidelines for alternative care in Kenya, it focuses more on the long-term care than the short-term or the temporary care. So now, so what the findings that we got from our study, one is that there has been a rising awareness on the need to provide quality ESED. And ESED for Uthabiti, or what we call ESED, is early childhood care, education, and development. So there's been a rising awareness on its importance, and that's why now we are here in this conference, because more and more it has been made aware to every stakeholder that this is just not childcare, it's now quality childcare. Number two, what we appreciate is that devolution led to an increase of this awareness. So now every stakeholder in each county wants to take part in improving the lives of their children. And this has also led to demand for quality, which is a good thing. The third finding that we had is the services are generally provided by disaggregated manner. This means that we have services provided by the Department of Children's Services. We have another one by the Ministry of Health, and then another one by Ministry of Education. So different departments provide services differently. That is what we mean by disintegrated.
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Yeah. And then there is little focus on budgeting and the resource allocation to childcare. That is another one. Then also there has been little to no research on the provision of services, of childcare services in Kenya. There's also inadequate data, which has been a study done in 2019 by Uthabiti with ALSA stakeholders identified inadequate data as a barrier to childcare and the sector. There's also, childcare itself is unaffordable to the women, mostly in informal settlement, which is a big issue. Almost clearing up, we have also challenges in registration of childcare facilities, and that can be attested to by many women, the many stakeholders who work with women in the settlements. Then the last one, we have a large number of untrained caregivers and nannies. We take someone from our home and then actually just have them take care of your children because that is what is available. What is Uthabiti's recommendation or response? So what we do as Uthabiti, we ensure that we collect as much as evidence as possible so that we can influence policy and work with governments and county governments to support them so that they can operationalize the acts and the policies that we have, and eventually ensure that the stakeholders or the government or the country as Kenya, we be able to practice quality childcare in Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you very much. Okay, we will swiftly move to Joyce Wesonga in the same breath. And then we will up to 5 minutes rounds of questions for them. And then we change gears to the remaining 3 presentations. Our online audience, anyone managing them? Are they with us? How many are they, if we could know? 1,000. 11, okay. Yeah, 11 from 11 counties. Those are so many. Thank you. Okay, Joyce, you have your 10 minutes beginning now, up to 10 minutes.
Clearly, I'll start without the presentation, but I think we can start. So my name is Joyce. It's okay, it's fine. I'm comfortable. So my name is Joyce Wesonga, Stakeholder Engagement Coordinator, and happy to discuss this. I'll pick it up from where my colleagues just stopped. I think my presentation is about, after reflecting on the gaps of policy and regulations, how do you go about it in a space where we're all seated here, we are different, we're either government, your development partners, your funders, your implementers, your researchers, your academicians. How do you converge and have a common conversation and actually influence change? So that's where my conversation starts. And with the BT, having reflected on the gaps, especially on the policy, we have, together with the partners, started the initiative, the Collaborative Action for Childcare in Kenya. This is an umbrella initiative, and it brings together, it seeks to just accelerate the growth of ECD. And how it's envisioned is it is an ever-growing space that brings together actors. As I've mentioned, it could be development partners, it could be governments, both national, counties, the Council of Governors, and other stakeholders that are important to ensure that this conversation is, because what has happened over time, and I think experience has taught us, is that we have very good policy conversations in one corner. And then when you get to that point where you need to get it out, you find yourself alone. Either you can't, we call them validation processes, but sometimes there is no one who can validate what you said because you didn't even speak to them. So that's one of the gaps, and that's one of the main reasons why UTHBT envisioned this and started this movement that hopes to bring everyone on board. And so I think I've already spoken through that. So far, we started this process by maybe just starting consultations with very few organizations. I think initially we were consulting highly with ECD Network, APHRC, Madrasa Early Childhood, Afghan. We have spoken to global development incubators, and just kidogo early years. And over time, these conversations have expanded. We've been consulting, and I think currently, if we were to check out the number of organizations we've consulted with, it could be over 50 and growing. And we hope that that is. So this is an initiative started by UTHBT, but we hope that it can be owned by everyone in the space. And for government, I think we, as UTHBT, have put our foot into spaces with MOH. I think we have put our foot in the nurturing care conversation. We have our footing in the NESEC, National Early Childhood Care, NESEC, National Early Childhood Education Committee. Education Committee. And I think also just to reinforce, we're also having those conversations and began having them at county level and bringing them down to what we call SESEC. So there are counties here, I think specifically Kisumu, we are having active conversations of just starting that conversation, operationalizing SESEC and having continuous conversation that will help coordinate. County governments that we are working with currently, and I'm proud that I think they are all represented in this room. We have Nairobi County, we have Mombasa County, as mentioned, and we have Kisumu County. And very recently, we've also started having conversations with Kajiado County and Busia County. And the space is ever expanding. And what we hope is that as you create the awareness and the need to converge, you will get more and more counties on board so that they can have a movement of just looking at ECD policies that work for us and an ECD space that is vibrant, including, I think, the newest, today listening, I was impressed and kept reflecting the prisons. That's a good space, and the policy conversation, I think, will be a space that we will also want to on board as one of the state actors that we can engage. So why the collaborative? I think, and my previous speakers have mentioned this, so I won't spend so much time. We realize the collaborative is a good space to enable learning. We learn more. We learn what is, like just what is happening here at the conference. We've all converged so that we learn. So the BT has deliberately initiated this, and we've tested this. We've had launching of a series of learning forums. We've held one in Kisumu County. We've held one in Mombasa County. And very soon, I think the next 2 weeks, we will also be having one in Nairobi. These are just spaces to invigorate our learning and for each county to have a retrospect and understand what are really their needs so that even when they're engaging, even for policy, they are very specific on their needs. So that they're not just creating because it's a movement and everyone is creating, but it speaks to a specific need for those counties. I look forward to Nairobi having this, having done this in Mombasa and Kisumu County. And as well as we do this, we also look out for the neighboring counties, just so that it can have a sort of a regional conversation. And the end goal is that these are conversations that can feed into a conference like this. That then you can have a conversation to say, this region, these are the issues and this is the solutions that we are designing that work for this region, rather than assuming it's a one-fit-all. The second reason why we do this, and I think it's been said, it's policy advocacy. As I said, lobbying for policy as one organization is a mammoth task. You can't keep knocking a government office and saying, we have this problem. But if you form a space where everyone interrogates and then you create an agenda that you present to government as a need together, it makes more sense, it's effective, and chances are high you'll actually be heard. So advocacy becomes one of the reasons why the collaborative is a very good space to engage. And I think part of it, as we've just said, it's just organizing. We appreciate the role the ECD network plays, and we're just saying, can this be a good way to ride on to those spaces and keep growing spaces where we are well coordinated, we're well represented, and we understand what are our needs in our context. I think the other one, why it was important is, and it's been said, I think I've listened to speakers, very little is invested in early years, and that's a fact. And so how do you make it a case when you're all operating in your many spaces? If we come together, and I think even governments have heard them speak and say budgetary allocation to ECD is usually very low. There's a joke amongst my friends here, and we keep saying, because children don't have a vote. So we will not listen to them as much, yeah? We start with the ones who vote, and then finally we come to children. So that conversation, how do we change it and prioritize children, even as government sitting here? How do we make it known? And I think Madam Commissioner today morning made a case and said she's just doing her part. But can we push that? So could this be the space that you could want to use to do that? And then
2 minutes.
Yeah, you've also spoken about research and data. I won't go so much into that because we all know there's not much research. Could this be the space where we share the learning and we deliberately go out to find information and evidence that helps us to plan, to budget, to design, and even have an advocacy case rather than just speaking. I think one of the things we've learned as we organize, especially from the learnings, the funding issue, and I think I've talked about it. Very little funding, and so how do we come together so that we pull together and we also support governments to lobby for increased investments by county governments, by national ministries, line ministries, so that more money can be put into these spaces to support early childhood. I think we've talked about. I'm trying to think what else I have not talked about. What were our problems dealing? So I think I've also talked about sector fragmentation and said it just helps us coordinate and get ourselves speaking. We've had a very good, I think, opportunity to engage with county governments. The 3 county governments that we have now really been engaging, it's been very successful. So far, I think we're beginning to change the mentality that partners are on this side and government is this. We work alongside government. So we're walking the journey with you and not assuming that government is on that side, partners are on this side, because we will not change policy and influence policy if we all operate differently. So it's a journey. We really want to start working together as we do this. Finally, I think one of the biggest challenges we've faced, COVID-19 restrictions hasn't been very kind to us in terms of just building the collaborative. You realize we were not able to meet as much. I think even in terms of our engagements, and counties sitting here will own up that enough times we had to postpone something because of government restrictions. We can't meet physically. Online, it's tricky because of network, of challenges, connectivity. So it's been a journey, but I think for us, we're also proud to say it didn't kill our motivation. And that's why I think most of the government's officers are also here. We are happy that they can now champion and influence some of those spaces. And I think going forward, we know we have a voice.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, you're on 10 minutes. Oh, you are getting there. Thank you. A round of applause for Joyce Wesonga. Thank you very much. So these 3 colleagues sit with me in the same office. They've taken me for a number of lunches and coffee dates because they wanted to lobby that I give them more time. Sorry, I let you down, but I ate and enjoyed your lunch. Okay, so can we ask either observations, questions? It doesn't have to be a question. It can be brief comments, sharing, observations. I know financing hasn't been touched enough, and we hope that in the subsequent 3 presentations that we can look, because financing is a challenge. No matter how much we sit down here and talk, unless we pump in resources into early childhood development, we will still have the same problems. I think harmonization of policies. And for someone like me, I think the saddest part is the nature in which we are developing random and haphazard policies across the nation, that we need at some point to have a discussion. And we're working on a policy conference with the PD and a few stakeholders, because we need to be harmonized. A child in Turkana, Busia, Kwale, Nairobi, they have equal rights of access to quality care. And we need to come to a place where we need to compel our counties. If we are developing acts or policies, they must be in tandem at the same time. And of course we have to put in resources as much as possible. And then we're saying no child should be left behind, whether it's a child in prison, children with disabilities, children in marginalized communities, all children need to have access to these quality services. So let me give opportunity both to online audience and people here to any comments or questions. So we'll take questions, and then please tell us who you're directing the question to or an observation. I don't know how we do this with the microphone. Anyone to help me move around? No, Joyce, you're a guest speaker for now. Okay, I'll do this myself. Okay. Thank you. Now I want you to sit down. You're a boss for now. Yes. Thank you very much for helping. So there is one here, CEC in Nandi County. Oh, okay. Since you have the mic,
Thank you. Mine is not a question.
introduce yourself and then quick question.
Esther Kimani. I work for the county government of Nairobi. Mine is not a question, really. It's a comment to the three speakers who've talked about childcare services and facilities. I would, and maybe with regard to what you've just said about not making random policies and regulations, I think I noted a gap in this conference that I did not see representation in the Council of Governors. And I think for harmonization of policies, the Council of Governors would come in handy because each county is independent in its own right. And I think we are all connected through the Council of Governors. So I would recommend that maybe next time, or there is a way that the Council of Governors can also be invited to such fora so that they can help in the harmonization of such things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a rapporteur in the house. Please, I think that's a recommendation that should go to the communique tomorrow. Thank you, CEC Nandi County. And if you can introduce yourself, apart from her things I already introduced.
CC for Education, Nandi County. I really want to appreciate this conference and the conversation that is going on here, because it's really relevant to us, considering the fact that early childhood development is a factor that is relegated to the corner somewhere there. Even if we look at our infrastructure in our counties, the infrastructure we inherited, you realize that ECD was relegated to the most dilapidated buildings and all that. And this kind of conversation is going to help us to change that narrative. So my comment is about Joyce. I had you speak, Joyce, here. And you said you started having a conversation with counties like Kisumu, Nairobi, Mombasa. I almost asked you, have you ever thought of, there's a county called Nandi in Kenya? Yes, there's a county called Nandi, and it is a neighbor to Kisumu County. So my challenge to you is also consider using the outfits that are already present, that are already available. For example, the Lake Region Economic Bloc, which has 8 counties. So instead of dealing with one county at a go, bring out this. It's easier for you to deal with. I know each county has got its individual and its unique needs. But if you bring as many counties using the outfits that you will find, then you'll be able to move further. So I welcome you to Nandi County. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will be welcoming a quick response from these colleagues. We have one. I'll take 3. Those hands that are already up, they are now for Mombasa and these 3. Then we can get responses.
Thank you very much. My name is Victor Serede, Director ECD, Viga County. Allow me to just join the conversation from what Tracy presented. She identified so many gaps that surrounds the provision of childcare services in the selected counties where they did their research. I want also to add to that conversation that currently I want to believe we do not have a formal curriculum for training the caregivers and the nannies. Maybe as we think alongside the developing of the policy, we should also have in mind the issue of a curriculum for the same. Most often we confuse childcare services with the pre-primary policy and services. Therefore, let us have that distinction and work towards developing a curriculum for the same. Thank you.
My name is Makada David from Turkana County. Just rotating around the policy is just a suggestion that should be taken by all counties. About ECD, ECD is about, and ECD is a political program. That is something that everybody should understand. And I really thank this gathering because we are now coming together to fight for these children. The policy issue is still a problem. We have our national pre-primary policy, which is bringing PP1 and PP2 to the Ministry of Education. The main focus will be on education, and yet we are dealing with children even below 3 years. My colleague has mentioned, and that's why I was really motivated to stand and say something. We need to sit down, and this is the forum that can at least push some things to be very clear. I know there was something I read about the session paper 2019. When you look at down there, it is really talking about 0 to 3 years. We need to see how are we going to prepare the training. The training, you know, when you talk about the entry grade, our focus in ECD is not about qualification. Anybody who works with the children needs to get a training. And this is what we need to ensure that is happening. Even now, you see, they say the ECD teachers should be trained in TTCs. Who is going to train them? How prepared is the government? Or picking secondary school teachers to go and train them? That's already an issue. Need to discuss, and then some recommendations should be put forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And by the way, we have officials from the ministry here who are responsible for policies within the early childhood development. I will be welcoming Director Moriazi later if you have a comment on the same. Chebet, and then we go to the last one.
Good afternoon, men and ladies of substance. My name is Jebet Cheponga from County Government of Mombasa. And the issue I'm raising is based on the findings from Udhabiti. And the issue is...
Can you hold your mic close because of the online audience?
So I'm raising my issue based on the findings of Udhabiti, that there is little focus on providing resources and budgeting for childcare services. And ECD network for Kenya has been in existence for the last, I think this should be the 5th year since its existence. So the members or the people who matter in this conference have talked, they have discussed, they have documented, and if there is any literature that is needed, already I know we have volumes of it. Now, if this little focus is there, now should we maybe, the ECD network is our mouthpiece. So I think it's just a recommendation that maybe they need to have another strategy, either to go to the Council of Governors to lobby, and even the county members of County Assembly, who are our champions in maybe passing these bills, and also maybe looking for resources for our counties. I think they should be having such a meeting, a forum, even once in a year, so that they are up in knowing the importance of these childcare services.
Thank you. That's another recommendation. Our rapporteurs, thank you very much. Before we go to the last face-to-face audience, we have a question from Elizabeth online. Anyone can read for me, or just open the chat there? Or you would like to speak, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, team. I'm Elizabeth, the director, Machakos County. Now, I have 2 issues. The first one is the refresher courses for the CBC for the early childhood teachers. You realize that TSC has talked about their teachers going back to school. And for the counties, preschool is part of the basic education, yet we are so silent and not structured on the same. Yet the preschool is core foundation for the basic education. And number two, with the new cut up of the grade to go to the training institutions, a bigger lot is lost. Remember, we still have teachers who are certificates. We are clearly not being guided how to go about it, yet they are already employed by the counties. Some of them are permanently employed, yet they are certificate holders. So we need clear guidance on all these structures, because at the end of the day, you agree with me, the manpower is the key as the children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, all the way from Machakos. And I think I'm going to ask the director from the Ministry of Education to attempt to respond to that and the other one. Last but not least, introduce yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much, Leonard. My name is Patrick Ochieng, ECD Coordinator, Save the Children International, based at the country office in Nairobi. Mine is a very serious and unless we deal with this, then I don't know how we shall move forward. And I want to ruffle feathers a bit, because the directors are here, the CECs are here, and the chief officers are here. Joyce did mention something to the effect that we have very little budgetary allocation for early childhood development. And all of us are aware that the education departments of county governments have some money that have been given to them to oversight pre-primary and, of course, the provision of childcare services. But then we need to ask ourselves, out of all this money that the county education department has been given, how much goes to pre-primary education? How much goes to child care services? The bulk of this money, of course, goes to the provision of bursaries. We can't underrate the importance of bursaries. But we need to ask ourselves, as the county education department in charge of pre-primary and in charge of oversighting child care services, we need to balance. So unless we deal with the politics in the county government, we'll keep coming here and talking about low budgetary allocation, and yet the bulk of it is spent in the provision of bursaries. I remember there was a time I attended a conference, Leonard. It was the African conference that was at Safari Park. And somebody did say that for them, the priority is provision of bursaries, because if you want to get yourself out of political office, then get bursaries out of the equation. So this is something that we need to deal with. The politics, I don't know who will help us, but something needs to be done. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Were you wearing a red shirt in the morning? Okay, I thought I had seen you. Okay, so I've consulted, and that might partly be coming up in the next presentation on financing. But I agree with you. I think we need to be naked on truth. We're not doing enough. And CECs, with all respect, I think we need to talk. We need to talk. And I think this conference should have even been called by the CECs nationally, for the rest of us to help you push the agenda across the counties to get more resources. But I'll leave that. My colleague probably would respond to that. So very quickly, 1 minute, if there is anything that needs to be responded to, please do. You don't have to respond to everything. I think some more recommendations. And then as I do that, Ken, you can start setting up your presentation. So let me begin with Tracy, Safina.
I believe most of the comments that came up were the recommendations on how we can work with the county governments, Department of Education, and other stakeholders. So I think it's about time, as my colleague here Joyce was saying, we need to work together, not in silos, so that we can all influence policy together. So thank you so much for your comments. We hope to adhere to them. We look forward to working on them. Yeah, Joyce, do you have anything else to add?
think mine is just to commit that yes, we've had, and I think one of the things we picked in the learning meeting in Kisumu is the need to pursue the conversation through LREP. So I think it's been deliberate as an organization, we've recognized that. And so Nandi County is definitely within that space. And we were excited even in this conference that that's the direction we should be taking. I think the COG conversation, the recommendation is welcome. And as I mentioned, it was one of the stakeholders we mapped. And so the conversation needs to move there, especially for replication, so that you reach the 47 counties within. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And the LREP model, I think, is a good one. Last but not least for now, let's welcome the Director, ECD National Government.
Thank you, participants. My name is Moria Sigari, the Director of ECD, the Minister of Education Headquarters. I want to inform the gathering that all that we are discussing, we are on track. We are getting somewhere. This is just but the beginning. That the policies keep on changing as time goes, as needs comes. So I'm sure. I want to mention that recently we had a meeting with all the CEC members in Naivasha. We have resolutions. Some of you who are with us can agree with me. And these resolutions went down to the COG. We are the COG representatives in the meeting. I think Bernard, you were there. Leonard, you were there. The resolutions are almost the same. We were with the chairman, COG, Governor Mutai Kahiga of Nyeri. So all this that we are discussing, the issue of training teachers, that now teachers, that the certificate teachers are being retrained. There is an upgrade of the certificate teachers to diploma level. And, we have to start from somewhere. Those teachers, the numbers we shall train, the smaller numbers, we shall be expanding with the time, and then we shall reach everybody in terms of enriching the quality of teachers, the skills and their knowledge, so that we develop this area of ECD. So at the same time, I want to thank those counties which have come up with modalities of reaching the children. That certain counties have a percentage of the money you are talking about, which reaches the child. I want to say that let's move with the speed as directors of ECD from the various counties, CEC members from the various counties. Let's follow suit. Let's emulate where is Mombasa? What Mombasa has done. My sister, Yebet, from Mombasa, and the CEC member left shortly. He's somewhere. Are aware of what's happening. Kindly, let's correct it from every county. You have this number of teachers, certificate teachers, diploma, and a degree. Let us have the number of learners in PP1, PP2 in every county, so that we are able to get this data, and this data will help us plan for every individual. We also want to integrate the data to what we call enemies, so that at the touch of a button, we are able to know how many PP1 learners do we have, boys and girls, in PP1 and in PP2 and in total. So those, I think like Kakamega, they have moved a step. I don't know what's happening in Ifiga, whether we are able to identify the number of learners we have in PP1, PP2 in terms of gender. So let's move that level. And then with consultations, I'm sure at the next conference, we shall have at least achieved a lot. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Thank you. So some progress is being made, but there is need to be urgent and speed up, accelerate that. Thank you very much for all those comments, observations that need to go to the communique tomorrow. We will take that. Okay, so we will now welcome Ken. The presentation is ready. He will do 2 presentations in a row. Karibu, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you, and I think those are very good observations. So I'm going to take you through a system strengthening approach to scaling up nurturing care for early childhood development. I believe the conversation is going to change a little bit now to looking at this child who is, of course, 0 to 3, and what we are doing in CI. So Thank you. My presentation is again getting lost somewhere. but but it'll be coming up in a short while. Thank you. But this particular conversation that we want to start, and we've started in Ece County, is about trying to scale up and strengthen systems through, of course, nurturing care for early childhood development. And in this, sharing with you a particular journey on how we started this in Ece, what we've been able to do up to this far, and of course, what still remains to be done. There's still a lot to be done, and this particular activity is happening through a lot of partnership, and of course, using a model whereby we are bringing on board all the stakeholders who are, of course, in the same act of nurturing care for early childhood development. If you can see, and you've heard from the presentations that have been done here earlier, even from our own First Lady, talking about nurturing care, and also the CEC education just talked about it earlier on in the morning. And of course, this is part of what I'm going to present today to you. Okay, thanks. Now, I've just told you I'm going to talk about the system strengthening on early childhood development. Why system strengthening approach? We realize that this should be an integrated approach. The child is our child, all of us, and we should be able to put in synergy and efforts together to be able to do this. And this is backed by evidence from Lancet in 2016, and of course WHO also in 2020. They emphasize the importance of holistic nurturing care through integrated services, whereby we will bring in all our efforts to be able to do this. Policy related to improving ECD, I think this has been talked about, but those are some of the policies. We are incorporating policies in health, the community health strategy, the policy of 2020-2030, the RMNCH, the Kenya Health Policy framework, that is 2014-2030, newborn child and adolescent health, and of course the National Pre-Primary Education Policy, and of course National Early Childhood Development Policy. And then also in other institutions we have the Children's Act. So the purpose of integrated multi-sectoral approach is we are trying to leverage on the knowledge, expertise, and of course the resources that we have, bringing them together, and of course focusing towards promotion of nurturing care for early childhood development. So why integrated multi-sectoral approach in scaling up? We did realize as a county that of course each and every partner was just concentrating on different things. And it was important for us to be able to bring all of them together, map them first, bring them together, and of course tell them what we want as a county, because this is government led, and through that then they put their resources in the same basket, and also put their resources in the same course, which is of course scaling up nurturing care for early childhood development. And this is still backed by the study by Lancet. So the model in CI is government-led, evidence-based, multi-sectoral approach, and then of course implemented through the live course, and of course riding on every opportunity and every available platform. Like what we have here, we had a scientific conference last year, and then of course this particular conference on ECD that we're also leveraging on. So the journey, we started by forming, of course, the ECD Multi-Sectoral Committee. And of course, this was government-led. You can see our first lady there, of course, talking to the stakeholders on this. And of course, she is the patron of the Multi-Sectoral Committee. And we have a team of partners within that particular committee, and also experts and consultants who support us through. So this is a nurturing care ecosystem. You can see the child and the mother in the middle, and all these particular partners and organizations and also the government are just putting efforts towards making sure that the child and the mother who are there get the requisite nurturing care. So we had a joint work plan. We do co-creation together and strategy on how to be able to, of course, enhance nurturing care for early childhood development. And this helps us a lot in trying to make sure that we do not really have resources that have been or duplicated in some particular aspects. So in this, we also introduce the political leadership. This picture here, that is the speaker of the county assembly, whom we also introduced in this. And then, of course, those are county assembly members undergoing a training on nurturing care for early childhood development. We also went to other partners like the Ngao team, and these were senior police officers within the county being brought for this particular kind of a training. We also went forward and trained religious leaders. We also did a training to other champions that were there within the community. So what did you achieve by this? By doing this, there was a flagship project in the county investment plan. It was in the CIDP. Nurturing care for ECD, of course, was put in certain acts like the Health Act. We had components of nurturing care for ECD in all departmental work plans, and that supported the county government in coming up with the cabinet paper that our CEC Health talked about yesterday. And then we all had one bus, and the bus is now becoming smaller, and we are now opening up a train because we are scaling up to the Lake Region Economic Block. So some of the perceived strategies for tracking scaling up for nurturing care, this is a government-led coordination. There's a government-led coordination committee. I've talked about the governor being the person in the steering, and then of course we have the patron, who is the first lady, and of course an MST that is led by the advisor to the governor on health matters, and then of course a team of partners and other technical staffs. So what do we say when we do this? If we change the beginning of the story, then we change the whole story. And by this, we will be able to see the importance of looking at this child who is 0 to 3, because we are told very clearly in the science of ECD that by the third year, the brain of a child is 97% developed. So if you'll be putting in resources to a brain that you did not really nurture and develop earlier, then it means investing more and more on trying to make sure that this happens. So my second presentation.
Thank you. And he's done very well on time. I think he's only taken 8 minutes.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Ken. We'll transition to the second. Another 7 minutes, thereabout.
Or even less.
Or even less.
Yeah.
And then I'll seek your indulgence. We will do another 7 minutes for the last presentation by Eva Masinde. And then we will take one round of questions. Then we can break. We've asked that our tea is reserved, so don't worry about that. Eva Masinde, can you confirm you're with us?
Yes, I am.
Is your presentation ready?
Yes.
You will be sharing your screen.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll just another about 7 minutes or less, and then we come to you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Everything should have been working like this since yesterday morning. Huh? So the CI model, and I know I've been involved at the very beginning, is really a model you can critique. Some of you from the counties, look at what can you transplant to some of our counties. It's not magic, but I think it is moving mountains. And I think there's a lot that we can learn and replicate and even, move faster than CI. Yeah, but I know that you will not allow that, but okay, go ahead, Ken.
Thanks, Leonard, for that. Now I'm taking you to the second presentation, which is priority setting for early childhood initiatives, analysis, policy, guidelines, and of course financing across the Lake Region Economic Bloc. What I've just shared with you earlier was what we are doing in CI, and then now from that, then we are transiting now to the Lake Region Economic Bloc. So in this, then I've talked about what ECD is, and of course nurturing care, and talked about the importance of nurturing this child from 0 to 3. And then of course, secondly, now why invest in nurturing care? Now today, children will become tomorrow's citizens, workers, and parents. Yeah? It's here we boast as a land of heroes. And indeed, you just heard from the professor yesterday while opening up that for any stone that you throw, there's a more likelihood that it might hit a professor, yeah, in CI. And we want to keep that. And as we want to keep that, we've decided to invest on the early years of this child, from 0 to 3. When the brain is developing to 97% by the third year, we have the wish that by that particular time, then this child has all that it requires for them to be able to be our next leaders. So that we are doing with the partners that we have. So that's one of the reasons why we set priority. And in setting priority, we are looking at of course, trying to build an efficient, responsive, and resilient system. And while building this particular system, then we only do it through that particular multi-sectoral approach and move with it with the others after realizing the results. So we, in priority setting, we aimed at providing the best use of financial resources. And by doing so, we decided to, of course, share with the multi-sectoral team that each and every department has a role in nurturing care for early childhood development. So they will only pick on the role that they can be able to play as a department, and with that particular role, then they encompass it in their own policies, and of course invest on it in a way that it can be able to support nurturing care for early childhood development. And then this is a government-led process. We have the CEC governance picking lead, and of course bringing up all the CECs and the technical team to the table to be able to discuss nurturing care for early childhood development. So what and why the Lake Region Economic Bloc? After realizing the results and becoming a university on early childhood development, it was important for us to be able to scale up to other counties. And that we could only do through one structure, the Lake Region Economic Bloc, that has 15 counties within. So in doing so, we, of course, went through the Secretariat of Lake Region Economic Bloc, through the chair of the bloc, and of course engaged him on an MOU that got signed. And from that particular kind of engagement, then all other counties were allowed to be able to come in, and we share ideas on how we can be able to scale up ECD and also invest on it. And then, of course, the status of the county priority setting for ECD initiatives. We carried out a situation analysis, did desk reviews, And of course, also had a key informant interview with the, of course, directors from health in those particular counties, directors of ECD in those particular counties, and of course the chief officers, and also in some of the counties, the CECs. And of course got data that of course helped us in how we can be able to scale up to these other counties within the Lake Region Economic Bloc. So the priority areas that we are looking at the background information, because we found out that the early childhood development, of course, and nurturing care can be happening within those particular counties, but they do not know that they are practicing this. So you are doing a background checkup to be able to know what they are doing towards, of course, enhancing nurturing care for early childhood development. And we picked at those particular key, of course, priority areas, looking at the workforce, looking at the governance and leadership, and of course, looking at the investments that are putting in nurturing care for early childhood development. And then now on governance, on the situation analysis, it revealed that, of course, there was that particular government commitment in nurturing care for early childhood development, and this we could see from the various indicators that we had, both from education and the health departments within those particular counties. And of course, that showed us that if we are told we are able to pick leadership and have a government-led kind of a program for those particular counties, then it will also be easier for them to be able to, of course, come up with a good program on nurturing care for early childhood development. So those were the ratings within the counties, the 14 counties of LREB. And of course, that helped us in also prioritizing on which particular counties required maybe to start this particular program as you scale up, because we could not start in all the 14 counties. So we wanted a scientific way of course, coming up with the counties that we start with. So on financial and investment, of course, this is how the counties were investing on both education and health, on aspect of nurturing care. And of course, the health bit, I think, was doing well because of course, the conditional grants that we get through THS, which one of the conditions for that particular grant is there must be a budgetary increment on each financial year for you to be able to get the grant. And I think the investment on education that has been talked about here. So the per capita allocations to health per county, I think you can see from this, there was that particular normal increment because of course, the conditional grants that we are getting from the World Bank. Investment in education sector, these are the particular budgets that the counties had, and of course allocation that was done to the education center. And you can see from that particular allocation, just like had been said by the people who had talked earlier, it is a very small investment, and again, after getting that investment, most of it again is going to the bursaries and other things, yeah? And then of course the intersectoral and multi-sectoral collaboration, we have a strong multi-sectoral coordination that I've shared with you, all the way from the governor, the patron who is the first lady, and of course the county multi-sectoral committee that of course has stakeholders, both of course technical and of course also the county executive committee members. On the final scores that we had, now these scores are the ones that helped us pick a few counties that of course we will be able to start this with. And of course you can see from that particular graph, we picked 4 counties. But this was not the final stage for picking counties, because there were those counties that of course were already converted and they wanted to start this through investment. So for us, we are only to give the technical assistance, but when counties invest in nurturing care for early childhood development, then we'll continue giving that particular assistance, and they also become part of the counties that we start with. So in conclusion, just like I'd mentioned earlier, investing in nurturing care for early childhood development is key. We need to prioritize, and of course, counties need to invest wisely in children. We are the voice of children. If we don't talk about the 0 to 3, they'll only cry and they're not going to have their voices heard. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ken. Very insightful, and I love the ranking, the budget analysis so much. And I think that's a good mirror for us to daringly, see what we are doing and how far we've gone. Nyadien Mwandu Aluta continua. That's not Luo. Mtoto ni mali. Okay. Last but not least, Eva Masinde with WATSI. You're welcome. Begin your presentation and just share your screen.
All right. Thank you. Let me share my screen.
I hope you have the rights to share.
I don't.
Okay, someone will grant you shortly.
Okay,
so
thank you.
You have about 7 minutes or so. And thank you for being patient online.
No problem. Thanks.
You can begin as someone helps you with the rights.
All right. No problem. I can just give you a brief overview of who we are. So my name is Eva Masinde. I'm the program manager for the Early Childhood Development Initiative. Global Development Incubator is a non-profit organization that we have a strong track record of designing and incubating collaborative initiatives in several sectors. We've done so in finance, we've done in health, and we recently also worked with Uthabiti just in terms of setting up. Now, our research has been informed of over a period of time. We started this out with an intention of just understanding the budgetary allocation towards early childhood development. The initial idea was to look at it from a wholesome view, from the nurturing care framework perspective, but again, due to limitations of data, that was not possible. So we, while doing this report, focused on early education, as this is where the data is readily available. I still am unable to share my screen.
Someone is working on it. I think in less than a minute you'll have it.
Okay, thank you.
And Eva, we have about perhaps 100 participants here, plus 10 includes you online. So,
all right.
Yeah, and we can also see you now.
Oh, thanks. Let me just share my, okay, now I can share my screen. So I have quickly gone through this in terms of who we are and whom we've worked with. So because of time, I'll just quickly delve into the report and the findings. So our main aim was to evaluate the county level data on early education to inform expenditure and policy and driving towards improved outcomes. In terms of methodology, we conducted this exercise through desktop research. We obtained the data from the Bureau of Statistics, the Ministry of Education, that's the statistical booklet, and the Office of the Controller of Budget website, and then augmented this with supplementary information from over 18 stakeholders within 3 to 4 month time period, just looking to understand how to break down or disaggregate the data, and then did an analysis to be able to just map out the interventions and the expenditure, and also looking at different leading indicators. We came up with 4 insights while doing this work, and one of them was that there is need for disaggregated data to make meaningful assessments. Joyce of Uthabiti actually mentioned this earlier, and it's something we are echoing. And the effect of CBC and COVID-19 also affected the collection of data, implying that for anyone who's looking to mirror and just map out work, 2018 is the cleanest benchmark. Then efforts in ECE and ECD should actually continue targeting public sector delivery, because we have over 70% of our students in public centers. And then special attention should be given to the arid and semi-arid regions regarding the student to teacher ratio, because it's one of the highest. And even in our analysis, we saw some of the counties that do have a discrepancy between the student to teacher ratio in public versus private centers. Out of this, we are hoping to launch our report once we've gotten more information. And we also are asking for feedback in terms of just picking out some of the things you would like further elaboration or providing much more details that will give the nuances needed. So again, the recommendations, the findings and the recommendations. So for the disaggregated data, what we are saying is that there is need for a standardized budget template that will emphasize on standalone budget lines for ECE. And then on the second recommendation is that ECE interventions need to target public sector because 70% of our learners are in public schools, and this account for 61% of our learning institutions. And then I mentioned about the CBC implementation of the curriculum-based based curriculum and the COVID-19 effect in 2020. So any comparison someone or policymakers make toward this has to take that into in consideration. And also the last one is the student to teacher ratios, just addressing that gap and looking to lower it to reach the Ministry of Education recommended targets as well as the UNICEF. So on the ECE expenditure, what we did is we looked at how much counties have allocated towards education in the last 7 years, and this averaged to around 8.4. However, this figure is still a proxy because of several reasons. One, counties actually provide this data lump sum in terms of having education and combined it with ICT. So there are different sub-programs that education data is lumped with. So it's not possible to be able to just get more detailed granular data publicly. Then the second element is that education, even at the county level, because technical and vocational education and training is also another devolved function. So again, that is lumped up, which would mean that this proxy of 8.4% is still high, and it will probably come to below 5% if you are actually to look at education alone. So our recommendation from this is that there is need, and I think this is the right forum, to be able to just advocate for standalone budget lines for ECD in the Office of the Controller, the implementation reports that the Office of the Controller of Budget actually shares online, so that it becomes easier to track allocation towards this sector and identify gaps. Now, when we did our analysis in terms of county by county, you will see that Kwale County is the highest at 23% of its budget allocated towards ECD. This is within a 6 or 7 year time period. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have Laikipia at 2%. So there's quite a gap in terms of performance. And we're seeing that 21 counties have on average allocated more than 8.4% of their budget towards ECD within this period. Then moving on, there were questions, I think, prior to this.
The last one was what? What was the last?
Laikipia at 2%. So Laikipia was at 2%, Kwale was at 23%, if you're looking at the highest and the lowest. And then when we're looking at the spending per child, because that was one of the questions that was asked during this session, on average, we are spending around 12,000 shillings per child. That's the average for this year. As you can see, in 2016, the figure was quite high. There was an increased allocation towards ECD in general across all the counties, and this can actually be picked in the slide, in the earlier slide, where you have 13.4% of county government budgets was allocated towards ECD. Now, if we compare this to other countries, we are spending, in dollar terms, we're spending around $231 per child, compared to South Africa at $753. We have countries like Switzerland at $13,000 per child, Netherlands at $7,000 per child. So there is a lot, much more work that needs to be done in terms of allocation towards children. And remember, even this figure that we're sharing with you is not exclusively ECD alone, because it's education and combines TVET. So I'm sure the figure here could be less. Then moving on to the learners, of course, as you can see, the blue charts actually indicate learning in public institutions. So the left chart shows that 70% of Kenya's early learners are in public institutions. These are the private centers. And then the chart on the right actually shows that of these, 61% of the learning centers are public, and then 70% of the students are in public institutions. As you can see, there's a big discrepancy in both charts when you compare 2018 and 2019. So when we're moving to 2019, you can see the number of centers increased by 10%, and this was mostly as a result of the Ministry of Education guideline that required pre-primary schools to be established. So that showed the increase in centers. And then looking at the other chart where we are seeing the student enrollment, there was a 19% drop in student enrollment following the implementation of the competency-based curriculum, and this is because of the requirement to only have children between the ages of 4 and 5 years enrolled in PP1 and PP2. So looking at 2020, we are seeing that the figures are low. So the best comparison is what we're saying. 2018 would give you the cleanest benchmark without these two occurrences. Then the recommendation, of course, coming from this is the need to target a public sector because of the concentration in public institutions, and then being cognizant of the fact that there has been the effect of COVID. And I'll explain this further. Again, looking at 2020, the data has been provided up to March. So not up to, there could have been more number of centers that were actually built from March up to December, but this was not availed, just to make sure that you have like for like when you're doing the comparison. And then we also analyzed in terms of the enrollment in public and private centers in 2019, because this is the latest data. And you can see Samburu County has the highest ratio at around 98% of its students enrolled in public centers. Nairobi is at the other end of the spectrum, where 68% of students are actually enrolled in private centers. In fact, looking at the last 4 or 5 counties from Nakuru, Kiambu, Machakos, Mombasa, and Nairobi, these are counties with urban centers. So of course, the enrollment rates are geared towards, or the enrollment rate is geared towards the private centers. So just being able to take that into consideration when enacting policies or doing any program of work. Then we also finally looked at the student-teacher ratio. Of course, the recommended Ministry of Education ratio stands at 25 and UNICEF at 20. So as a country, we have done, there has been some sort of improvement, but then a slight dip again in 2020 because of the implementation of CBC, where the focus was on trained teachers. So that number reduced. And
okay, you have 1 minute, Eva.
All right, thank you for that. And when we compare the student-to-teacher ratio in terms of where Kenya stands, we're saying that Kenya is at around 29. There's India almost targeting or almost at the same place. Ghana is higher. Of course, US is quite low at 9%. I mean, at 9, a student-to-teacher ratio of 9. So we may track well if you're comparing with our East African counterparts, but there's also need for us to be able to just realize that there's much more that needs to be done. Now, quickly moving to the last recommendation, as you can see, we did this analysis of student-to-teacher ratio for all the counties, and the counties within the semi-arid regions have the highest ratios, Turkana at 161, Mandera at around 80, and then at the other end of the spectrum, you have Muranga and Machakos with low ratios. So 2 things emerged from this work. One, of course, counties with semi-arid regions have high ratios, and the widest variance between public and private schools, as you can see, the red and the blue charts. But what came out, what was actually jumped out for us was Nairobi County and Garissa, where if you look at the gap between the ratio in public and private centers, it's quite higher than its counterparts in terms of where it's standing. So this is something that we are pointing out and saying that Nairobi and Garissa counties may have room in terms of implementation of that, given that the overall student-to-teacher ratio is low. So there is room to be able to just increase or address that ratio. So I think I'm done in terms of the recommendations and the findings, and we'll be happy to take questions on this.
Thank you very much, Eva. We had you. We lost about a minute because of power interruption. We didn't see the presentation, but I believe this will be circulated to all of us. Very informative slides, budget allocations, county by county analysis, investment per capita per child. I think these are very, very important things. And a scientific conference like this should really be telling us these things. Sometimes I feel I waste my time in conferences when we talk a lot of things that don't make sense and they don't move us forward. I think we need to come here and tell ourselves what we are investing in is 200 in a child, while countries that are excelling are investing more than $1,000. And then we go back home and say, what do we do? Rather than have good time here, take tea, make unnecessary connections, and then just go back business as usual. So thank you very much. Thank you, Ken. Thank you for being patient to be the last ones. And thank you for all of you staying to the end. So I'll take just one quick round of questions for Ken and Eva, and then we wrap up for tea. I have one question from Moses Obiero from Afghan, and then another Afghan from Dr. George. So it looks like we have 2 questions only. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity. And I also want to take this opportunity to say thank you to the presenters for insightful kind of highlights that they've given. My name is Moses Abiero from Africa Early Childhood Network. I think I will direct my question or comment to the CIA case study, and also to an extent the Lake region scale up. First is just to appreciate the kind of work that has gone into that, and it will be good if this is catalogued into something that maybe can be published for many counties to learn from. But my question is in terms of tracking progress in terms of indicators. When you started the CI initiative, what kind of progress you've realized in terms of health indicators, in terms of education indicators, and to some extent, how you also integrated child protection into this? Because I can see a lot of health, a lot of education, but maybe I missed that part, the part for child protection, maybe that. And lastly, for learning, in terms of implementation of existing policies as you scale up the initiative. And one of the policies that have been talked about over some time is the schemes of service for ECD workforce. Have we implemented that? What kind of systems did SIA put in place to implement that other counties can learn from? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Moses. We take last from Dr. George, and then we will get quick responses, and then we go. I have a last one for gender balance from Clean Start. So after you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity and the presenters, especially the SIA presentation, the Smart Start SIA. This is a very wonderful program, trying to bring in all partners, trying to look at the welfare of all children. My question perhaps is that there are children on the fringes, and here I'm thinking about open call given by the DCG prisons, opportunities for partnership. I'm talking about children in prisons that accompany their mothers to prison. I wonder whether the Smart Start CIA has thought about these children. And when Smart Start CIA is scaled up to the LREB and maybe perhaps the rest of the country, how do the counties think of bringing these children on board? What programs can we put in place? And finally, against Smart Start Siaya, the ECD, I wonder whether this program is anchored on some kind of multi-sectoral plan, or is it just based on annual planning, or is it embedded in the CIDP? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that's relevant for purposes of the discussion of this breakout session. Eva, I don't know if you're still sharing your screen. Someone wanted to look at the second last slide for some data there. And I know we're taking conducts of all our breakout session. We believe you have interest around policy conversations, and I think we'll circulate amongst the presenters. And any subsequent conversations, I think we will be happy to reach out definitely to you. So that's what you wanted.
I'm sharing my screen, Lonan.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Mombi. I'm from Clean Start Kenya. It's the screen that was showing the percentage of Kwale being the first and Laikipia being the last. I just
Right.
needed percentage. Yes. But anyway, maybe to react to what Daktari had, that one. What percentage is that in Kwale?
23%.
Thank you. That was a very quick question. But to react to Dr. Owino's question, in CI, I don't think we have a women prison, though we have provision for girls from juvenile justice, the teenage moms who are in juvenile justice are taken to CIA from all over the country. So those are other children that we can consider in your within your program, or include within your program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My colleague here has been raising hand, and for some reason I didn't see. So we made provision for one last question. Oops, ECD here.
Thank you very much. So
a bit loud. So
my name is Christine Odero. I work for Faraja Foundation. So mine is just to commend the two presenters, because the presentation is on high notch, because they are dealing with policies, structures, strengthening of structures. And I felt someone just mentioned the aspect of child protection. And I felt from the beginning, I haven't heard about matters to do with ECD in relation to children who are victims of sexual gender-based violence. And then also, there's a gap on the tracking mechanisms. These children who are even in the government institutions, are the government bodies strengthened to give data and support that data on the whereabouts of those children? Because right now, you know very well, the people who are addressing and talking about child trafficking at the GIZ. But I think I would recommend that these organizations that are very strong in dealing with the bodies and government sectors that deals with children and matters to do with ECD should look into even the issues of trafficking. We know children every day, even yesterday as we were sleeping, a child was being trafficked, or a child was crying somewhere, or a child was being stolen. Mothers are every day. Children are born and then they disappear. So those are just my, I don't know if I'm leaving anything. I've written them somewhere.
Thank you.
Those are the issues.
Yeah, and I think we haven't spoken on some of those issues. So I think, thank you for bringing them to the fore. So very quick round of response. We'll take from Ken first, and then Eva, if there is anything that Ken leaves out that you feel you need to respond, please do that, and then we will wrap up there.
Thank you. Thank you for those very good questions. I think for us it's a learning process, and we are really happy to get those particular feedbacks. Yeah, we are in the process of publishing, and I think we've been used as case studies in several studies on ECD. Zimbabwe, Mozambique, yeah. And tracking progress on the health indicators, yeah, there are certain indicators that have improved, especially on health. I can talk about the stunting. We can talk about wasting, and also generally nutrition indicators, and also an increase in EBF. and FIC. Okay, this is because when community health volunteers were trained on nurturing care for early childhood development, they've been giving priority to the vulnerable households with people with vulnerabilities, like for example, households that have the pregnant women and households that has children who needs nurturing care. So they've been going through even checking if at all they have delayed developmental milestones and referring them. They are linking them to the various health facilities and even to the community health assistance for of course assistance. On the Beaton policy implementation scheme of service on ECD, yes, see, I just said we are working within a multi-sectoral group, and within that particular multi-sectoral group, also the education department, both national and county, are part of it. And of course, this also helps in answering the bit on the issue of children, the issue of children protection. We have the children's department as part of it. Alan is called Alan. He comes often and he helps us in, of course, drafting that. And then on the multi-sectoral plan, it is in the CIDP. I think I mentioned that, yeah? It's in the CIDP of the county, and I had also mentioned the fact that it is government-led. We already have a cabinet paper that had passed. An allocation of 10 million was done to nurturing care for early childhood development. Yeah, I think those are questions.
Thank you very much. Eva, any additional comments?
Yes, just to request for data transparency with a particular emphasis on early childhood development, and also perhaps just float around or suggest to this advocacy body that perhaps we could start pushing for and requesting for more data, because during today's earlier session where the counties were just giving us an update on the progress, there was much more detail that was provided that is not shared in the implementation reports. So having requesting for this information publicly will help us in terms of tracking and seeing where we are and seeing what gaps need to be addressed so that we can continue moving forward. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We had a request for a presentation all the way from Zambia, but it wasn't necessarily in our breakout session. So unfortunately, we would not be able to take in. Perhaps consult with MC, and then it can be done tomorrow from Grant Mapona. Joyce, I see you're trying to raise your hand. Okay, in less than a minute. Thank you.
I think generally I just thought, reflecting on the entire conversation, one of the things that I think we've observed, and I think all of us sitting here have observed, is the bureaucratic nature of the policy-making processes. It is long, it's rigorous, it's expensive, and of course we have good justification. We want to say it's a process. I know now we will say public participation, it's a requirement, but I sometimes wonder and reflect whether we have made it bureaucratic and very tough. And is it to our benefit or to our loss? Is it our children suffering to our gain? Because I don't see why it should take a year to get a policy or even more in place when you have everyone around the table. I think for me it's a takeaway. Let's reflect. Must it be that long, or do we make it long? Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. That's important. So I think in summary, what we've shared here is data, laws, implementation, and partnership. Those are really great things, and thank you for listening. Let's give an applause to our team of presenters. I think they've done a great job. Thank you very much, and thank you for staying in. Thank you, Oscar, Dr. Olumbe. I am a retired chairman of the Kenya ECD board. That's why they cannot come close. So thank you, but we deserved this time. We were patient from yesterday, so I think we deserved the time. So thank you very much. Have a great evening and see you again tomorrow. God bless.